My Jetta started making some noise while driving, especially when turning the wheel slightly to the left. I put a jack, floor jack, underneath each side, and I wiggled the tire, and I was able to easily determine that it was the driver's side bearing that was going out, the wheel bearing, so the hub assembly. So ended up deciding, well, maybe I'm gonna try to replace it myself for basically two reasons. One reason is that I have the opportunity of getting some more tools with the money I'd save, and just to see if I could do it. So anyway, I went and bought a replacement hub assembly, about 127 bucks, give or take. And here's the new tools that I had to get. So basically, the triple square or 12-point set, you need the 12 millimeter bit. Apparently, a breaker bar. Oh yeah, and so I got this one at Northern Tool. This was $3.99 for the set of 4. It wasn't located with all the rest of the standard socket tools. It was actually, you know, in the same aisle as you would have probably like air fresheners and stuff. So it was kind of an odd spot in Northern Tool, but since I don't plan on doing this very often, I figured the $4 set was probably the best way of going. Then, of course, at Harbor Freight, I got the rest of the stuff just because it was close to my house. And anyway, so 27 millimeter socket to take off the wheel, the hub, the rotor. I'll need some torque bits, metric, of course. Then a breaker bar and a torque wrench. This is on sale for $9 this weekend, half inch. This was basically $10 or $11, and I believe this was $7 or so. So anyway, that's the tools, the new tools that I had to get. And then of course I'm going to use my jack stands and floor jack to jack up the car with. Of course, this is not necessarily informational video as much as it is just to see if I can do it and to see get some solicit comments. You know, I'm sure there's plenty of guys out here that do this all the time. So if you have suggestions, because I'm sure the other side's going to go out here any day. So if you have any suggestions or better ways of doing something, I'm all ears. So anyway, here we go. So first thing I'm going to try to do is slightly loosen the big nut. Before I jack up the car, and so I read somewhere that you shouldn't loosen it up too much, just barely, like less than 90 degrees, otherwise you can damage some things. So I'm gonna use my new tools here. Okay, so that's just 90 degrees. That's all I want to loosen it. So I don't really like using the jack that comes with the car because it's really wobbly when you get the car in the air. And so I'm going to use the floor jack to lift the car and then place the jack stands in place. I'm putting some cloth here because my floor jack has too big of a plate here, and so I'm locating it under where the points are for the standard jack to fit, but I'm using a lot of cloth. I guess some guys use rubber to protect this area so it doesn't crush that fin that the regular jack goes around. I'm going to lift it just enough to remove the tire, or get the bolts that hold on the tire rim loose, and then I'll jack it up the rest of the way and put the jack stands under it. Okay. So go ahead, see if you can do it. Did you get all the nuts off?
Yeah, all those.
Okay. Stand back.
Wait, that's not fair.
That's how you do it.
You don't. I don't think you're supposed to do that.
Okay, I realized my jack stands were way too tall, so I just used some old car ramps. Put it under this point, which should provide plenty of backup stability for my regular floor car jack here. One thing I'm leaving is this whole arm here able to move up and down because I need to pull that off later, so I'm not gonna make the car stand interfere with that. So there's not really many places to brace, it appears, underneath these Jettas. So anyway, I'm gonna proceed with taking off the brake. This is the connector that senses whether the brake pads are worn down. So I'll put a screwdriver in there and it'll slide right off. And then we're going to take off the caliper. Okay, I'm going to pop these little dust covers off of here, out of here, and then. Okay. So here's the bolts that we're going to take out. It's a 6-sided. Can you see it? Yeah. Here. 6-sided. Like an Allen wrench, but it's really hard to do an Allen wrench back there, so I'm going to use a hex, a socket set to do that with. So a 7mm hex will work to take those out, it looks like. A little bit easier than trying to use the Allen wrench, that's for sure. Okay, there's one bolt. Just gotta stick it in there. There's rubber, I'll kind of hold it in place for now. And the second one down below.
No.
Take off the spring that holds the caliper in place. Remember, this is the front one, this is the back. The sensor is actually attached to the back one. So, let me just clip this up. Oops. Get back here. Hang it up off of here for now, so that there's no tension on the tube. Okay, so now we can take off the rest of the calipers. These are some big old bolts here. I don't know if we need to take those off or not. There's some big old bolts right there. Okay, at this point, we should be able to take off the rotor itself. And since we loosened it while it was already on the ground, hopefully this should be pretty easy and not require, the breaker bar or anything like that. That's a big old washer. there's a torque screw that we'll need to use. This is a T30, which appears to be the right size for that. And that came off easily. Okay. This bolt, there's 4 of them, this bolt and 2 on the other side, but I can't really get in there due to the boot. So I read that you need to drop the this arm first. So these bolts have to come out, and I'm going to try to drop that arm. So there isn't really, in my metric set, it jumped from 15 to 17, so then basically a 16 millimeter is equivalent to about 5/8 inch in standard sizes. So that's what I'm going to use, a deep socket to pull out, and it's actually like a spark plug one. Well, looks like it'll work to pull off those bolts with the long threads. Get up to. So the steering knuckle should come loose here. And these arms should be able to get, yep, it all swung loose here. Okay, that was the reason for keeping that back. So now, hopefully we can pull this forward and release. So here, if you look inside here, so the axle comes into the rotor here, and hopefully we can get it to release that by pulling it forward. So this probably isn't the most proper method of removing the axle from the rotor, but I used extender with a socket and just tapped it with a dead blow mallet, and it kept scooting it back to get the rotor loosened. So anyway, it was stuck on there pretty good, but just tapping on it just kind of constantly for a while seemed to get it through. I'm going to try to take off the actual the bolts themselves for the actual, I don't know if you can see this. From the bolts that hold the hub assembly, the bearing on there, and try to free it from the rotor after I get the rotor off, because so I was using this breaker bar and something felt really soft, and I was concerned that this 12-point bit was stripping in the hub assembly. And here's what I found out happened. I was converting down from the 1/2 inch to run a 1/2 inch socket, which is what the 12-point uses here. This is a 1/2 inch, and so you can see what happened. This whole Pittsburgh brand, where we know where this came from, this spun on itself. You can see what happened. It sheared right here. I didn't think I'd be powerful enough with the breaker bar to do that by hand, but apparently I was strong enough. So I ended up finding this old socket that was in my toolbox. I don't know what brand it is, but I think it was my grandfather's, and that went to 1/2 inch, which you know, fits these 12-point bits, and this didn't spin at all. So anyway, that was the key. Use something a little more solid, and probably not use one of these step-down devices, because they're not made to withstand that sort of twisting torque or whatever. Okay, I'm having a lot of trouble getting actually the rotor and the hub assembly off. So I've unscrewed all the 12-point bolts that hold on the hub assembly, and I'm going to tap them with a hammer from the back side. I put a little penetrant in there and it seems to be moving, so that's what I'm doing next. I've kind of left the bolts out part way, not all the way in, but not all the way out, so that it's still attached to the hub assembly, so that I can kind of beat on them. Okay, so oddly enough, I got the rotor off and the bearing first. I'm not able to get the wheel hub off of the rotor yet. It seems to be rusted on there or cemented on there, so I'm just gonna put a little penetrant on there. I don't know, this must be pretty old. 39 cents. Anyway, on here, see if we can't just get it to slide off there a little easier. I think usually you're supposed to take the rotor off first, so let's just let this soak for a little bit, and hopefully I can just pop this through here in a second. Because it shouldn't be that hard to remove the bearing from the rotor. So I'm sure everyone else has a much better experience than me, but that's why I'm shooting this video. Well, I think that did the, yep, that was enough penetrant in there, just popped right off, so there's enough rust on there to really get it to wanna sit there. So there's where the hub came out of. We can clean this up a little bit too. I guess this is a sensor that you're supposed to be careful not pop off of there. It is pretty rusted in here, so I think I'll take a little bit of time to maybe sand that down with some emery cloth and put some anti-rust formula on there. Here's a new wheel hub assembly. I was advised to use thread locker on these bolts that hold on the back side of the hub assembly. So to use thread locker for that. And the other thing was, I read that you should use anti-seize on this portion of where the axle comes through into the hub. So I have some anti-seize to do that. So now I'm just going to reverse the steps and put it back together. I'm going to demonstrate the difference between, and maybe you can't hear it, but if you get the camera up close, between the new bearings and the old one. It's basically silent. Now let me take the old bearing that was bad. So there's definitely kind of a jingle, and there's also kind of a sh-sh-sh sound too. So we'll feed these nuts back in here with the thread locker on them and torque them back down. Putting this anti-seize in here. That should help it next time on the axle. Let's try to reinsert the axle here. Axle back in there. It's in there pretty far. Thread this in there temporarily. I think it will pull itself together when I torque it down. That's probably half the point. So at this point we can reattach this control arm here, or whatever it's called. I don't know the technical term for it, but Alright, so I got the control arm back up, torqued back down. Is it recording? And the 4 bolts that hold on the hub assembly bearing into the assembly. Now we can reattach the rotor. Lining up these holes here. Very good. This one came off really easily when I took it off originally, so I don't think there's any torque settings with that. Okay. Reattach the caliper and the brake pads to the rotor, and reattach the sensor for the brake pad wear sensor, and then torque down the main axle bolt in there, and we'll be done. Okay, shut it off. On this was to tighten to 148, loosen, and then retighten to 37. So that's what I'm doing right now, and this is the click type torque wrench. So there, that's 37, and then turn additional 60 degrees. So 60 degrees would be approximately down here. So if this is 90 straight up and down, 60 degrees would be about right here. So that's 60 degrees.